So let's get going. So it's me in the middle there. My name's Dan. So the agenda for this session, this one is, again, the overview of Preseem. So if you're already a Preseem customer, there's going to be some stuff that's new here, but you're also going to see some things that you already know, okay? I'm going to talk a little bit about quality of experience as a whole. I'm going to talk about the process that we work through with our customers to improve quality of experience, some new high-level overview of some new tools and new features. Jeremy's going to spend time in the next session really doing a deep dive on that on the technical side, so it's going to be very much an overview. And then Garrett's going to talk about some tools for your CSR team. And then we'll have a little break, and then we'll do the deep dive stuff after. So what is Preseem? Actually, maybe I should just ask, how many people are already Preseem customers here? Just about everybody? Okay, so I may go a little bit faster through some of the overview-y stuff, but anyway. So basically what we do is we give you the tools to understand and proactively improve the quality of experience in your network. Our goal as a company is to help local and regional internet providers grow, and we think the best way to do that is to give you the tools to deliver the best service possible. And that's essentially where Preseem comes out of that. So for us, when we think about quality of experience, we kind of think of the three big things that have to exist to solve this problem. The first is you have to be able to measure the customer experience, and you have to be able to do it in a way that is reflective of the customer experience. Traditional network monitoring tools, ICMP, SNMP and stuff, that's all very focused on network elements, and you need to do that. You need to monitor the health of individual elements, but it actually tells you very little about what's actually delivered to the customer. So you need to have tools to measure the customer's experience on the level that matches them. And you need to have that integrated with a deep understanding of the underlying access network. The first thing that we did here is we tied our quality of experience metrics to topology. And that turned them from just simple numbers attached to an IP address into something that's actionable. Because now you know which access points have problems, which towers have problems, et cetera, and gives you something to go target. And what we've done now over the last year, and the things that I'll talk a little bit about, and again, Jeremy's going to deep dive on, is we've went a whole lot deeper, where we can now expose a lot more information about the RF connection, specifically between an access point and a CPE radio, and we tied that together with a whole bunch of data analysis based on data we see across all our customers to be able to allow you to be proactive on an ongoing basis without having to spend a lot of time. So I'm going to touch on that. And then the third part is traffic management. So traffic management is important. You want to optimize for latency, not just throughput. You want to make sure your customers get a good experience even when their internet connection's busy. But in a way, this is kind of the last step. Like if the network's already overloaded, it doesn't matter how smart you are at packet shaping upstream. If the AP's dropping packets, you're still in trouble, right? So this is kind of it's more than icing on the cake, but it's kind of the last step that really takes you to the next level. So I won't go through all this, but at a really high level, we measure, analyze, and improve the quality of experience so that you can reduce your churn, address those my internet or slow calls that cause a lot of complaints and a lot of support costs, give you the tools to proactively improve the quality of experience across all the access points. So again, happier customers don't churn. Lower support costs. Obviously, customers that are getting a good experience don't call. That helps. But we also provide tools that can help you get to that root cause faster. Help you level up your team. This is really the new stuff that Jeremy's going to talk about, where we can take a lot of the magic out of RF debugging and planning and understanding and really boil that down to just a few numbers that can allow you to be much more proactive with a smaller team. Help you be more competitive as well, offer higher bandwidth, lower latency plans, and finally optimize on ROI. So every customer is going to get a good experience if you have one access point to one subscriber. Obviously, that's not a viable business. So you got to find that sweet spot of having equipment that's sufficiently loaded to make money, but not so loaded that people are unhappy. And that's something that we've been working hard to kind of quantify as well, and we're going to touch on that too. So we think about this, and I guess almost everybody put up their hand as already being customers, so this is going to be a little bit redundant perhaps, but we kind of think of this as a process of how people work with us and kind of end-to-end to improve the quality of experience. So the first thing we have to do is integrate into the network. We have to get a network inventory, get the subscriber information, IP assignments, all that kind of stuff. The second piece is to deploy the components. We need to deploy the polar so we can collect information from all of the elements in the network, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more as well. And the inline element, whose job it is to measure the subscriber QoE as the packets pass through, and then to do the optimization on top. Once those pieces are deployed, typically we'll find a few big problems, so super overloaded access points, backhauls, infrastructure problems, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Typically fix those problems, get those out of the way, and then it's time to turn on the QoE optimized shaping. Again, we'll talk about that in more detail, but we're trying to optimize the experience when the customer's self-congesting. And then from there, it really becomes this loop of ongoing using the tools to identify QoE problems and infrastructure problems and run that identify fix loop over and over again to just continue to deliver a better experience over time. And then the last little box there is respond. So the customers that do have problems, leveraging the tools to more efficiently get to root cause, isolate if it's a problem in the home or it's an access point or whatever those problems are. So that's kind of the 50,000 foot view of that. So now I'm going to go just a little bit into each of those areas and talk a bit about what we do, and then I'll talk a few of the new features as well. So for anybody that's a customer, you guys know we measure our quality of experience directly from the subscriber traffic. We don't inject packets into the network. We watch the traffic flow through, and we extract out latency loss, throughput, retransmissions, packets rates, all that kind of stuff. We map that back to the network topology. So again, we can say the quality of experience is bad at this access point or this tower. And what's really cool about this is we're measuring the customer's traffic. So we're actually getting a picture of the experience from from our inline element all the way down to like the iPhone in the house. Because even if they're dropping packets on their home Wi-Fi, we're still going to see that because it's part of the packet flow. So it gives insight much deeper in than you would get for example, simple AP or CPE monitoring. And we think this is really the only way to kind of get a big picture of the quality of experience in your network. It's kind of like a spotlight that shows you the parts of the network that deliver bad experience, and then you can dig a layer down and try to figure out where those come from. So this is an easy way to identify network and individual subscriber problems. Of course, we see things like overloaded backhauls, overloaded APs, poorly performing APs, misconfigured APs, obviously bad RF connections between the access point and a CPE radio is a frequent thing. And of course, in-home Wi-Fi problems become apparent as well. We've also seen some really crazy things over time here as well. Bad SFP, bad cables, bonded links that are configured for per packet load balancing, not flow load balancing, so they're reordering like every second packet. What's really cool about this is it's not trying to find one problem, it's trying to find symptoms of tons of different problems. So it doesn't matter what's causing those packets to be dropped or what's causing the high latency. It could be anything, but we're still going to measure it and we're going to show it exists, and then you can go dig for it afterwards. Now the next piece after the metrics we collect from the inline traffic is the access point and CPE radio metrics. So this is an area that we've just spent a lot of time adding, basically the last year adding to this. And essentially what we do from every access point and CPE radio is we collect all the things you'd need to debug that connection. RF parameters, RSSI, modulation, noise, frequency, channel width, all that stuff. Take that back for, again, every CPE radio and every access point. And we normalize this across all the vendors. So if you have Ubiquiti and Cambium, you kind of have one place where you can see these parameters and not have to jump into those other tools. And just to call that out for existing customers, like previously, we didn't have CPE radio side metrics in Preseem. That's something that we've just added now. And again, 2-year metric retention on that. So the use cases for this is really being able to dig in and understand what's happening with that history. So you can empower your team to dig in, again, without having to know the vendor tools. You could have L1 techs that you don't want to give access to your 3 radio platform vendor tools. They can see everything they need here, and you don't have to train them to go to all those other tools as well. You can compare current to past RF connection. I think one of these sessions a while back, Darren, who was talking, one of the first things he said is, I just want to have a long-term history of my RF connection between individual subscribers, because once you have that, you can usually figure out what the problem is if you can see when it changed, right? You can see the history. So that's enabled by this 2-year history as well. And also, of course, if customers call in and they say, my internet went to crap 2 weeks ago, then you can look and see, did something change with that individual connection? And if it did, then you kind of have a root cause already without spending a whole lot of time debugging with them if the problem is in their home or on your backhaul or on your AP, et cetera. Lastly, the information is all there as well if you want to go back and kind of compare the performance of different installs, different installers, and look at that over time. So we spent a whole bunch of time on that. Jeremy's going to dig in and show some of that stuff in the next session, but there's a lot more metrics on the RF level now available in Preseem. And what's cool about this is it gives you, again, everything you need to investigate But you still have to have a lot of RF knowledge, and you still have to have time, right? Because you're still going to look at each individual access point and CPU radio if you're trying to be productive. But what we've built on top of this information is a bunch of new scores that are designed to make it a lot easier to find RF problems in your network and identify where you need to go make improvements. So I'm going to talk about 5 things. I'm going to talk about 2 CPE radio scores, 2 AP scores, and then the subscriber capacity on top of that. So the CPE radio scores, there's 2 of them. There's the RF score, which is basically a summarization of the RF conditions for that entire individual CPE radio. So all the things you'd expect, stability, modulation, RSSI, signal strength, all that kind of stuff. And it's compared against all of the radios we see in the same configuration. So all of that model at the same channel width, at the same framing type and that. And it gives us ability to actually give a health of that individual CPU radio on the RF level. So you can use this just to sort that column and find the customers that have the worst RF connections in your whole network. You don't have to go look at individual APs. You don't need to go look at individual CPU radios. And then the really cool one on top of that is the business value score. So the business value score combines that RF score with the behavior of the individual subscriber. So if you have a customer that has a very poor RF connection and they're a heavy user, that means they use a lot of airtime. They're hurting other subscribers, and they're hurting how many subscribers you can put on the access point. So you can use this business impact or business value score. So we used to call it business impact score until about a week ago. So if you hear us mix that term up, it's because we're in change. Oops. Yeah, that's interesting. Let me figure out what that's doing. Okay. So if you hear me say business impact, that's going away. But again, sort to find the ones that have the worst business value score, and you've immediately identified which customers you need to go fix to free up airtime on busy access points. That's going to give you the ability to sell more on that access point and, of course, deliver a better experience as well. And I already mentioned the ability to sort by the RF to be proactive. Like if you're going into an area to do a truck roll, you can just look at the CPU radios in that area, which ones have a bad score. Maybe you fix them at the same time rather than waiting for the customer to call in a month later and complain. The access point scores are structured roughly the same. So there's an RF score, which basically will tell you which APs in your network have the worst RF. And again, Jeremy's going to spend an hour on the details here, so we'll don't have to go super deep right now. But it'll tell you which access points have the worst RF in your network, again, combined with real-world performance across the tens of thousands of access points and hundreds of thousands of CPU radios we see. We build that model and compare to construct that score. And then the access point health score on top of the RF scores functions the same. It identifies which APs are in the worst case from delivering a quality of experience to the end customers. So use cases, identify the worst RF on your APs. Go out, find those APs with bad RF, fix them before the customers complain. Or if you have APs with a bad health score, those are the ones that customers are likely already unhappy. And then you can use the individual CPE radio scores to know which radios to fix to make that access point happy. Or sometimes it's just simply overloaded and you need to split it in 2. My personal favorite thing that we've done in the last while is this subscriber capacity thing. So based on the behavior of subscribers in your network, so how much data they use, combined with the behavioral models of that individual access point and its parameters, based on its parameter grouping, we're able to convert those subscribers the subscriber usage into airtime usage, which then we can convert into the number of subscribers on the access point. So for every access point, we can say you've got either a positive or a negative number of subscriber capacity available. Obviously, positive means you can sell more. Negative means you have too many subscribers on that access point to deliver a good quality of experience. And I think this thing's awesome because it takes something really complicated, like all of the RF knowledge and knowing the kind of intuiting the behavior of individual access points and CPU radios, and converts it down to a unit that anybody can understand. I mean, you can talk to your marketing department in your company, and they'll immediately know, okay, well, that area, I can add N customers. If you tell them there's 5% free airtime, it's meaningless to them. And even then, it's not really that meaningful without a full data model behind it anyway. So this thing's great. Jeremy's going to show a whole bunch more of it. But I think it's super, super powerful to be able to convert something as complicated as RF conditions down to subscriber units. And then lastly, one more after this, we talked about the traffic optimization. So that is definitely important and really important to deliver a good experience. And the reason for that is many applications are actually more latency sensitive than they are throughput sensitive. And unfortunately, because it's so much easier to measure throughput, people generally run speed tests and they don't measure latency properly. So applications, web browsing, gaming, most video conferencing, all those things, they're more impacted by latency than just pure raw throughput. And the way that most network elements function is when they get overloaded, they build up a deep queue of packets. That deep queue introduces latency and it introduces loss, and that's where you get a poor experience. So if you've ever had that experience where you have a network link that's like 90% it's fine, 95% it just goes to crap, right? That's because those buffers are overflowing and the latency is happening and it's starting to drop packets. So, and of course, this usually happens on access points and backhauls, really anywhere that's not doing something more intelligent than just a simple, long FIFO queue. So what we do instead is we leverage something, an area of techniques called AQM, or Active Queue Management, and FQCODL being one particular instance of that. And we leverage that to allow the latency to stay low even under load. So this little example here shows a plan rate enforced by a simple queue, where the customer was maxing out their, I forget if this was 10 meg or 20 meg, it doesn't matter. They were maxing out their plan, and that simple queue was introducing a huge amount of latency. But when we turned on our shapers, which optimize for latency instead of only throughput, the latency that they experience goes way down. So we have customers that'll say things like, a 10 meg plan with this type of shaping feels like a 20 meg plan or a 30 meg plan without it. And it's really because of that. Latency really, really matters to the customer experience. So this optimization, again, it doesn't, if your APs are already overloaded and they're dropping packets like crazy, this can't help there, but once that problem's solved, this makes a pretty dramatic difference to the customer experience. So all of those problems of, my kid watches Netflix and my Zoom call stops working. The flow isolation associated with this solves that problem. And then make it Pristine Blue. So again, existing customers, for a long time, we've had this red, yellow, and green coloring system for access point health. And what we've kind of learned over the last couple years is that where people really want to be is kind of the bottom half of the yellow. You want to still have a good experience, but have enough load on the access point that you're making money. And that's what we've decided to call this kind of Pristine Blue. So you'll notice all the scores in the UI as we're kind of rolling out the new stuff now, they have 4 states. And that blue is, again, where you want to be. In an ideal world, you've got all your access points there because they're full enough that you're optimally using them. And again, this is based on all the data we see across the 400 plus ISPs that we have as customers. And then they're still experiencing good quality of experience. Because you don't want to push that too far, because then you just do more damage than you're going to than good. So this is pretty cool too, and you'll see that in the scores that Jeremy's going to talk about in the next little while as well. I think we said almost everyone here is a customer, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the network diagram. But again, at a super high level, there's 2 things that need to be deployed: the inline network device to measure and optimize the quality of experience, the polar to collect information, and then all of that is pumped up to the cloud, and that's where we do all of the visualizations, the analysis, the scoring, the comparisons, and all that stuff, and make it available from there. So that was a little bit of a whirlwind overview of all the big pieces we do. We're going to deep dive in the next couple sessions. Garrett's going to go into a little bit of some CSR tools, and again, Jeremy in the next session on some of the deep dive on the new things. So with that, I will pass it off to Garrett, and then we'll stay up for questions before the next session starts.
Awesome, thanks, Dan. Is my audio on? Everybody can hear me? Okay, so yeah, this got a fairly short session on how do you use all this data and the concepts that Dan talked about to empower your customer service reps, CSRs, whatever you happen to call them. My name's Garrett. I think I've probably talked to, not about all of you, but most of you one time or another. I've trained, I don't think it's in the thousands, but certainly many hundreds of CSRs. I still love doing it. I'm pretty hands-on. It's one of the things, like as CEO, I try to keep close to our customers kind of thing. But having various conversations, especially again with these customer-facing teams, is they have a fairly unique set of challenges. Now, they tend to have a better balance of both people and technical skills. They're not purely engineers who maybe shouldn't talk to the customers as much, but they need to have some technical skills. At the same time, though, there's a lot of technology we throw at them that they have to become comfortable with. There's, lots of RF knowledge, like Dan talked about. There's different vendors, different technologies, different tools, and everything else. So that can really complicate things and make it harder to onboard new CSRs and that kind of thing. And while they're dealing with all that, they have to keep your customers happy, be efficient on the phone, all of that, and avoid unnecessary truck rolls, and also try and minimize escalations to your networking team so they can focus on fixing things, not keeping investigating different areas. So we really see the challenge here as to provide dedicated, customized tools for your CSRs that are focused on the information they need at a level of technology they can quickly wrap their heads around and turn it into customer answers. And so, most of you have probably seen this screen before, but I think, the existing inline measurements we do, coupled with the new, especially the RF score, I think is very powerful for these teams. And just a quick recap on this piece. So, as Dan mentioned, we measure the latency and all kinds of metrics from the inline device. So we know for every one of your subscribers if they're getting a good experience or not so good experience. And one of the most obvious ways that we often find is still latency. If there's any kind of bottleneck in the network, whether that's an in-home Wi-Fi issue, an RF issue, a backhaul problem, something is going to start buffering those packets and driving the latency up. And because we measure it from end to end, we'll find it, right? So if you get an incoming call with my internet is slow, you can see the rightmost column here is the subscriber latency. So that white line is high, you know there's an issue, right? So right away you can put yourself in your customer's shoes. Yes, the latency is high. I can totally see why they're calling about my internet is slow. So the next question is, well, okay, so there's a problem. Is it a subscriber issue maybe I can deal with, or is it a networking issue I have to escalate somewhere else? You simply look at the middle and the left column. We've also superimposed it as the yellow line on the right. Maybe it's not super easy to see here on the slide, but basically you can very quickly tell if the subscriber latency is high, there's an issue. If the network latency is high, it's a network problem. Probably create a ticket to some other team, I guess most of the time. But if that latency is low for the network, you know a lot. You know your access points are good. You know your backhauls are good. And it really is a problem specifically for the subscriber. And in that case, most often we found it's either an RF issue, there's something wrong with that connection that you have some control over, or if not that, in-home Wi-Fi. And we used to say before these new features, you got to sort of dig into your tools and everything else, but now we know. So the RF score in particular, you've got a score, a gauge 1 to 10, that basically tells you, is that a good connection or not? So within seconds, you'll know if that RF to that home is indeed good or not. And then, of course, it's color-coded, as Dan talked about. So basically, blue or green, it probably isn't your issue. Yellow or red, yeah, you might need to do a truck roll there and get that figured out. And so together with the very simple RF score, we've also added a bunch of diagnostic labels. And this is something some have implemented already, and we're still advancing it a bit more. But what we're working towards is take quite complex concepts and tell you in simple, English, what's wrong with it? Is there interference in the download direction? Is it this issue, that issue? So it'll literally tell you, right there on the screen, RF score is poor, and this is why. Which we think will be super powerful again for the CSRs to answer these calls. The other thing is a little bit of a coming soon part here. Plan assurance really fits into this nicely as well. So, just because an RF connection is good, that's good to know, but that doesn't necessarily tell you it is good, that the whole setup is good enough to have the plan speed that you actually sold to this customer. So plan assurance will tell you that. RF is good, however, given this 20 megahertz channel and these conditions, you really can't offer them 200 megs. I'm making this up a little bit, but that kind of thing. So we'll be able to tell you that. And sort of the flip side of that, if you have a customer that, maybe they have a large family, lots of streaming, that kind of thing, and they just need more bandwidth, and again, with the active queue management and shaping that Dan talked about, you shouldn't get too many of these calls, but there are cases where they just need a bigger plan as well. We'll tell you. We'll tell you based on their RF, the conditions of the access point, if we think you can give them a higher plan speed or not. So again, all available in pretty simple terms to the CSRs here. I'm not going to go through all this in great detail. We have this online. Some of you might have seen this. But I think really the point here is you can make a very simple process to train your CSRs on to say a call comes in, is there data flowing? Yes. is there a high latency? Okay, is it a network issue? Is it a subscriber issue? Is the RF score good? Like you can, I think within a minute or so, get through a bunch of this and tell you a lot about what's going on with that customer. Yeah, and like we've actually had this chart for some time, but the two boxes that have the big yellow around them used to be go somewhere else. Now we tell you. That's it. Like this, I didn't exactly train you as a CSR, but this is pretty much it. Like it's pretty simple. So that's it, I think, for the slides we have for this session, Dan, right? So at this point, we'll take any questions, both for Dan or myself, or yeah, Eden.
Are you going to make this available like on our iPhones so we can take a look at our network on our iPhones?
So the new, so if you probably haven't seen them yet. Yeah, sorry, the question is going to make it available on iPhones. So what he's alluding to is our current screens are not very mobile friendly. All the new ones that we just rolled out and the ones that will replace the existing ones are mobile friendly. So it will not be an app. That is something I'd love to do at some point down the road. But the new screens will function on phones, whereas some of the current ones are not very useful on phones. Yes.
They've gotten better when you can't just drag them around anymore, the individual panels, but yes. Yeah.
Is there going to be any type of redundant or high availability setup that you guys offer?
For the inline device? So most customers just deploy us on an OSPF bypass. So we do have a few customers that literally, there's two routers, there's a low cost and a high cost, and they have us on the low cost one, and if something dies, there's another Preseem sitting on the high cost. Most customers don't put one on the backup though. So that's certainly the simplest way to do it. We do have bypass modules as well, but honestly, it's much better to do that at the routing level than to rely on the physical bypasses anyway. So yeah, if you want, just keep the network up redundancy, just do OSPF between two routers. If you want Preseem redundancy, put one on both legs of that OSPF on both routers, and that solves the problem. It's really the best way to do it, I think. Yeah.
We use a third-party company for after-hours support, Server Plus, and we want to integrate them more into being able to resolve a lot of these problems after hours. And we're even thinking about maybe, if it's not them, somebody else, it would be full-time, third-party support.
It's fairly straightforward. You should just have to create an account on your Preseem accounts for them. They can log in and see everything you can as well. It's just whoever you give access to. The only thing right now is they need a unique email address. If Server Plus has a bunch of our customers as their customers, they would need some unique email address, but with that, they can log in.
Yeah, you can give anybody an account to view your metrics and scores and stuff that you want. You can do that right in the settings.
So they can view but not control?
That's right.
Yeah, and if you want us, we're always happy to do training. If you think they'd find value out of a dedicated training session, we're happy to do that as well.
Can you do that for Server Plus?
Well, if you want them to and they'd like to, we're game.
We're going to talk to them.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. Just let us know, we can help.
It would help every one of their customers that use Preseem, so it'd be worth it.
Yeah, there's a few. I know there's one in the Philippines that does things overnight that I expect is going to start using this as well. So we're good with that.
That limitation of the single email address, we're going to address that too, where you can have a single account that can view multiple companies, but right now you have to have, they're mapped one-to-one, a company to an account. So yeah, so they just have to create a separate one based on email address.
It's not a big problem for us. So this is quite a bit different than the original Preseem, which we're still using. This gives you more of an individual look at what's going on versus sort of a broad overview. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the quality of experience side is roughly the same, that measuring down to access points, subscribers, towers and stuff. But the new CPE radio scores, and well, I guess the CPE radio metrics and the scores that are built on top of them is all new. Yeah. So we just kind of announced that officially. We talked about it at the last WISPAPalooza, but we just kind of announced that officially a couple weeks ago. So we're slowly ramping customers onto it now that are interested. So it's going to take a little while to kind of get everybody there, but we're on it now.
I noticed the recent email you talked about, I think, 3 different levels of support. Is this, do you have pricing and stuff like that available here at the show, or?
Yep, yeah, and it's all on the website already too. That all switched last, 2 weeks ago when we launched everything. All the tiers and everything are now on the website. Yeah, so that essentially breaks down in two. So what we're calling essentials now is all of the inline metrics, the quality of experience, plus the CPU radio metrics. So you can, again, debug individual RF connections, AP to CPU radio, and then the scores and the features that allow you to kind of be proactive without spending a lot of time to find problems. They're in what we're calling the plus tier. And that's on the website. Yeah.
If you would like to try out the new things, we have free trials. The typical process is you say, can I have a look? Sure, we'll enable the features. In some cases, we need a couple passwords from you for the Ubiquity access creds, but pretty simple stuff. We turn it on, let it run for a week, make sure we get a bit of data. We do a walkthrough with you, walk through some, one of my favorite things is a list of all your CPEs sorted from worst to best. So what's the 10% worst CPEs, just right there, right? We'll have you verify that you agree. It's almost always been yes. I think always yes so far, but I'm sure it'll be an exception someday. And yeah, if you want to use it, we turn it on, you get a free trial, and then you switch. You can later go back. We're super flexible with all that.
So is that a month free trial or a year or what?
It's 15 days after we've enabled it, so you should have a solid 15 days out of 15 days, yeah. And again, we want you guys to be happy. If you try it for a month and you don't like it, please tell us. We think this is pretty good already, and we're continuing to work on it. But if you want to fall back, we're easy with all that as well.
And that 7-day data collection thing, the reason for that, and Jeremy might touch on this again as well, is these scores, they take more information. Like, they're not just simple thresholds. They take building a model, sort of what that access point's going to do, what that CPU radio is going to do. And until we have 7 days, we don't think we really have enough information to show you anything useful. So we turn it on, collect for 7 days, and then give you the access.
That minimum time frame model, it's always going to be something around that 7 days. And you'll probably touch on.
I can talk about it. I'll talk about it in the next session.
7 is actually a little short, but he'll cover all that.
Yeah, so the scores update more than every 7 days. It's just that until you have kind of a whole week, there's enough variation, they're just not as predictive.
If you're going to do truck rolls, you want a nice stable number with a bit of history. That's sort of the main point, I think, yeah. You're a machine today, Eden. Bring it on.
Question. What about other radios? There's some new radios coming out, Tarana, there's other radios, Cambium, all these different ones. But do you have a list of the radios you support or the ones you're getting ready to support?
Yes. So the short for right now, it's all of Ubiquity, all of Cambium's, and then MikroTik's as well. We have not done the LTE ones yet into the score system. So, I mean, they still work. Like, traffic flowing through them, we can measure QoE, we can do topology mapping, but we can't do scores for LTE radios or something like Tarana yet. So we are playing with Tarana and talking to them, and we have access to some APIs, but it's not done yet.
As soon as they give us the data we need, we'll have it. It's really where we're at.
Yeah, we're seeing enough interest in that one.
They'll be here at the show. We're going to pin them down again and say, come on.
It's only good for us to work together, so yeah.
So, but you support everything under Ubiquity and everything under MikroTik.
I think we're pretty decent. Yeah, we started with the AC. I think we've vetted the M gear, the older stuff. I'm not 100% certain about LTU, but we're
LTU is in progress.
In progress, yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, Mark just asked about Radwin as well, so.
We haven't started Radwin yet. We basically, we tried to get 85% out of the gate, right? So Radwin, I actually have built this for Radwin myself, so I know we can do it. It's just a matter of prioritizing it.
We happen to have a pretty good idea on what access points you guys use, so we've gone by market share, basically. Yeah.
We'll spend the next few months closing that gap and just driving down all the models and getting support across the board. Yeah. The LTE ones are going to be particularly interesting, and we just got to get the time to do them.